All right, so we're diving deep today into how to prepare for a V-belt coverer interview. And with us, we have an expert in the field and all the RoleCatcher resources ready to go to help you nail this thing.
These interviews can be pretty in-depth, so let's unpack everything you need to know.
Yeah, RoleCatcher even points out that there are a few different titles you might see out there, like rubber coating machine tender,
Right.
belt builder.
Right. It's important to recognize those variations because ultimately it's all the same core function. Operating those machines that wrap the V-belts in that rubberized fabric, it's all about precision and making sure those belts are super durable.
Got it. So when you're online searching those job boards, keep those other titles in mind too. Now let's talk about the work environment for a sec. RoleCatcher's guide kind of paints a picture of what to expect. What should someone be prepared for walking into that interview?
Well, you want to be prepared for a factory setting, so it could be noisy, potentially dusty. It's definitely hands-on and you'll be on your feet a lot. Lifting materials is common, so yeah, being physically prepared is key.
Okay, good to know. Let's jump into those interview questions now. RoleCatcher's AI can be really helpful here, right? It helps tailor your answers for each specific job.
Absolutely. It analyzes the job description and helps you figure out what skills and experiences to highlight, almost like having a personal coach in your pocket.
Love that.
Yeah.
So question 1 from the RoleCatcher guide. Can you explain your experience with V-belt covering machinery?
Mm.
How would you approach that one?
Well, honesty is key, of course, and being specific. Talk about the actual machines you've used, how well you can operate them, set them up and troubleshoot any minor issues. And even if you've only had training on certain machines, just be upfront about that.
Right, RoleCatcher actually has some sample answers in the guide that you can use as a starting point too. Something like, I've worked with, and then you name the specific machine for however many years, and I'm proficient in setting it up, operating it, and troubleshooting any minor issues. Easy to just plug in your own details.
Exactly. And you can even add in if you've done any training courses. Like I've also completed a training course on whatever it was to further develop my expertise. Really shows you're taking initiative.
And don't forget, the AI can actually give you feedback on your answer. Make sure it's clear and concise. Okay, next question. How do you ensure the quality of the V-belt covers you produce? What's the interviewer really trying to figure out here?
They're looking for that attention to detail, really understanding those quality control processes. So don't just say, I'm a perfectionist, give a real example. Maybe in a previous role, you implemented like a daily inspection checklist, or you noticed a way to improve the machine's tension to get a smoother cover.
It's all about showing, not just telling. And this is where RoleCatcher's AI can help you refine that answer and make it stronger. All right, question 3. Can you explain your experience with different types of V-belts? I'd imagine this is where knowing the ins and outs of the belts themselves really comes in.
It does. You got to show them you understand the different types, what they're used for, and their unique traits. And, be honest here. If you don't know much about a certain type, just focus on the ones you do.
Right, don't try to fake it.
Yep.
RoleCatcher even gives an example answer for this one. I'm most familiar with, and then list the types. At my previous company, I worked on projects that involved whatever those specific applications were, so I learned about their different properties and how they perform under various conditions.
Perfect. Now, another one that might come up is safety. How do you ensure the safety of yourself and others while operating V-belt covering machinery? Safety is super important in this role, so they want to know you take it seriously.
Okay, so what are some key things to highlight in your answer?
Definitely mention anything about safety protocols, protective gear best practices. And if you have any specific training or certifications, call those out. Shows you're proactive about safety and understand the hazards involved.
Makes sense. Okay, let's move on to question 5. How do you prioritize tasks when working on multiple V-belt covering projects simultaneously? This sounds like a time management question, right? Being able to stay organized when things get hectic.
Exactly. They want to know you can handle multiple deadlines and demands. So don't just say, I'm good at multitasking. Tell them how you do it. Maybe you use a task management system or break down big projects into smaller steps.
And RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you practice delivering those answers under pressure too, right? Like simulate that interview environment to build up your confidence.
That's right. It's a super helpful tool to feel prepared for those tough questions.
So we've covered some of the basics of the job and tackled a few common interview questions. What else should someone be thinking about as they're getting ready for this interview?
Well, one thing I noticed in the RoleCatcher Career Guide, it really emphasizes the importance of understanding different V-belt materials.
Oh yeah, it goes deeper than just knowing the types of belts.
Right. You got to know what they're made of, too.
Makes sense. So if they ask you something like, can you explain your experience working with different types of V-belt materials? You want to give some specific examples.
Exactly. Don't just list off materials. You want to connect them to real-world applications. So, for example, you might say, in a past role, I worked with V-belts that used a really high tensile strength fabric. Those were specifically designed for heavy machinery, and I learned how important it was to properly align the fabric layers for maximum durability.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Okay, what about troubleshooting? RoleCatcher lists this one. How do you troubleshoot issues that arise during V-belt covering production? That feels like a classic problem-solving question.
It is. And they're not just looking for a quick fix. They want to see how you think things through. So walk them through a specific time when you identified a production issue, explain how you diagnosed the problem step by step, and ultimately how you got everything back on track.
That's where that STAR method can come in handy, right? Situation, task, action, result. RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you structure your answers using that framework.
Right. And don't be afraid to talk about what you learned from that experience. Shows you're always growing and improving. Now let's switch gears a bit. RoleCatcher mentions a question about V-belt cover design. Can you explain your experience with V-belt cover design? Do you think every V-belt cover needs to have design experience?
That's a good question. I imagine it depends on the company and the specific role.
You're right. Not every position will involve hands-on design work. But if you do have some experience, definitely highlight that, even if it's just collaborating with engineers or offering feedback on existing designs. It shows a deeper understanding of how the product works and how it's designed.
And this is where RoleCatcher's AI can come in handy again. It can help you figure out if a question like this is even relevant to the specific job you're applying for, and then tailor your answer accordingly. All right, let's move on. Here's another one. Can you explain your experience with V-belt cover testing and analysis? This one sounds pretty in-depth.
It is. They're really trying to assess your knowledge of quality control and data analysis. If you've worked with any specific testing methods or equipment, be sure to mention those, like tensile strength tests or using a digital micrometer.
So again, it's about giving concrete examples to demonstrate your expertise. I'm sensing a theme here.
You got it. Specificity is key for these technical interviews. Okay, last question from the RoleCatcher guide. How do you ensure that V-belt cover production meets customer specifications? This one brings it back to the customer and their needs.
It's a good reminder that it's not just about operating the machines. It's about delivering a quality product that meets specific requirements.
Exactly. Highlight any experience you have with reviewing customer specifications, maybe communicating with your team to clarify anything that's unclear, and always doing those thorough quality checks. You could even say something like, before I start production, I carefully review the customer's order and their specs. And if anything is unclear, I'll reach out to the sales team or the engineers to get clarification. Then before anything ships out, I always double check that we've met all the requirements.
That's a great way to show you're detail-oriented and that customer satisfaction is important to you. And again, RoleCatcher's AI can help you practice delivering that answer with confidence.
Absolutely. Now, beyond those specific questions, RoleCatcher's career guide really emphasizes something crucial for anyone wanting to be a V-belt coverer.
About that?
Being adaptable. Technology is always changing, and the manufacturing landscape is evolving quickly.
Right. Automation is a hot topic these days. So how can someone preparing for this role show they're ready to adapt and learn new technologies?
It highlights staying curious and, continuously learning, maybe taking some online courses on new manufacturing technologies, or just being passionate about keeping up with industry trends in general.
So showing initiative outside of formal work experience.
Exactly. And you can bring that up in the interview too. Like if they ask about troubleshooting, you can mention how you're eager to learn about new diagnostic tools and techniques. Or when talking about quality control, you could talk about how you're following those advancements in automation and how they might impact V-belt covering down the line.
It's all about showing that you have a growth mindset, right?
Yep.
Not just content with the way things are.
Exactly. The V-belt coverers of the future need to be tech-savvy problem solvers, not just machine operators.
That's a really great point for anyone listening who's interested in this field. It's a job of the future, but you have to be ready to adapt and keep learning.
And RoleCatcher is such a great resource for staying ahead of the curve. It can help you find relevant training programs, industry news, even connect you with mentors to help guide you.
So it's not just about getting the job, it's about building a whole career.
Exactly. And remember, even if you don't land this specific job, everything you learned getting ready for this interview, those skills and insights will be valuable for any manufacturing role.
So true. It's all about building that foundation. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Any final thoughts for our listeners who are about to head into those V-Belt cover interviews?
Just go in there prepared. Be enthusiastic, let your passion for the work shine through, and don't forget about RoleCatcher's AI to help fine-tune your answers and boost your confidence. You got this.
I love that pep talk. And for everyone listening, remember, RoleCatcher is your secret weapon. Not just for landing the job, but for building a successful career. So until next time, keep diving deep and keep learning.